Thanks very much indeed, Lasker, and thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to, on behalf of Deputy Pat Deering, Ministers, in relation to the potential opportunities for the beef sector in recently opened markets and in the context of trade deals negotiated at EU level in recent times. And perhaps you make a statement on that, Minister. Thank you.
2 minutes.
Thank you, Deputy. Irish beef exports increased in value to €2.4 billion in 2018 and was exported to around 70 countries all over the world, according to CSO trade statistics. Opening new markets and expanding upon existing markets is a key part of our response to the challenges and uncertainty posed by Brexit, and is in line with the market development team of the Foodwise 2025 strategy. In April 2018, the Chinese market was successfully opened to Irish beef, and my officials continue to work towards opening and enhancing access to as many markets as possible. Beef markets have also recently been opened to the Ukraine, Kuwait and Qatar. The European Union-Japan Economic Partnership Agreement, the largest free trade agreement by the EU, entered into force on the 1st of February 2019. This provides for considerable additional market access for beef, I understand, in the region of Japan, in the region of 65,000 tonnes. Which in 2018, this provides significant opportunity to grow Irish beef exports to Japan, which in 2018 were some €3.6 million. Furthermore, earlier this year, my department secured an agreement to remove the 30-month age restriction on beef exports to Japan, the first EU member state to achieve this. The Comprehensive Economic and Trade Agreement, CETA, between the European Union and Canada entered into force provisionally in September 2017, removing over 99% of tariffs. Enhanced access to the Canadian market for EU beef was secured as part of the agreement. In 2018, some €2.8 million of Irish beef was exported to Canada, and this is expected to increase over time. The role of my department is to open markets for the industry, and it is then up to the industry, with the support of my department and Board BIA, to avail of these opportunities.
Deputy McLoughlin.
Thanks very much, Minister. And just in relation to, I suppose, the biggest issue and the concern for all of us would be in relation to Brexit and the additional markets. You mentioned the Japanese and also the Chinese and perhaps the Canadian. But I think the more markets that are opened to the beef farming community is vitally important in the present climate, because I think all of us are being lobbied at the present time, Minister, and there's huge concerns at the present time in relation to Brexit. And perhaps, maybe, I'm sure there are other markets that you will be looking at as well, and to see what the potential is there for additional business to be done through your department.
Thank you, Deputy. It's in terms of opening up as many markets as possible, and then improving where possible the terms and conditions under which that trade is done, and hence the 30-month age restriction on the Japanese market is significant. I mean, a lot has been spoken about, and rightly so, in the context of the UK market and the volume of beef that's going in there. Over 50% of our total produce. It is our ambition to have a future trading relationship that's as close as possible to the current one in a post-Brexit scenario, but obviously that all remains to be seen in the context of those negotiations. But it is our most valuable market. And whereas we open up a lot of markets, and there is potential in CETA, and there is potential in Japan, and there is potential in Mexico, the markets that we can access at the cheapest cost and which pay the best price has consistently been the UK market for many years, and thereafter other markets in the European Union. But opening up new markets, and indeed in terms of the Chinese market, for example, approving additional plants, and we will have a visit later this year in the next month of Chinese officials with a view to facilitating further trade in that area. So it's a constant endeavour.
Very much, Minister. Just in relation to, and that's important that you would mention the UK markets, which is our biggest market at the present time. But in the event of Brexit, no Brexit, what are the implications then in relation to going forward in relation to the market there in the British markets? Thank you.
Well, in a worst-case scenario, that market is in peril, but bear in mind, ultimately, the UK will have to conclude a trade agreement with the European Union. It is our belief that the best way to do that is by the withdrawal agreement, a transition phase, and a negotiated free trade agreement that's as comprehensive and as ambitious as possible. And, you know, it remains to be seen whether the UK decides to pursue an alternative course of action, but that market should always be important to us, and we have hard-won yards in that market in terms of our spaces on supermarket shelves, relationships that have been built up over many years, the knowledge and understanding that we have of it, the fact that it's English speaking, that's culturally very similar, taste-wise very similar to us. It's a market that's very often, in terms of the smaller food businesses, the one which is easiest to put their toe in the international markets for. So our ambition is to have the most comprehensive free trade agreement with them, hopefully that in a post-transition period after the withdrawal agreement is...
Deputy McLaughlin's own question, 30 seconds to introduce.
Thank you very much indeed. Minister, it's in relation to the opportunities for sheep meat. There's been some discussion in relation to the Japanese market and the opening of the Japanese market for the sheep meat, and perhaps you might make a statement in relation to that, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy. My officials continue to work towards opening and enhancing access to as many markets as possible. During my recent trade mission to Japan, I had the pleasure of announcing the agreement in principle on access to the Japanese market for Irish sheep meat. This agreement was the culmination of ongoing collaboration between my department, assisted by our embassy in Tokyo, and the Japanese Ministry of Agriculture, Forestry and Fisheries, and the Ministry of Health, Labour and Welfare in Japan. Details of the agreement are expected to be finalised shortly by an exchange of correspondence between my department and the relevant Japanese officials. Japan is one of the top 5 markets identified for the meat sector by Board BIA as part of the market prioritisation exercise carried out under the 7-point action plan on market access and exports in my department. Japan represents an important opportunity for sheep meat export. According to Board BIA study, last year Japan imported 24,565 tonnes of sheep meat at a value of over €170 million. The Japanese sheep meat import market has grown approximately 82% in value in the last 5 years alone. The role of my department is to open up market access and to remove barriers to trade. The industry must then take advantage of these opportunities. I am hopeful that Irish sheep meat exports will follow the same success that our dairy, pig meat and beef sectors have enjoyed in Japan.
Minister, in relation to that market, and I certainly hope, and I know that your recent visit there was very, very successful, but I think that there's huge potential there. You mentioned something in the region of over 170 million in relation to sheep meat. Have all the barriers been removed in relation going forward in relation to what you mentioned there, that there could have been some obstacles, but are all of those barriers, in your recent visit there, have you succeeded in removing all the barriers in relation to going forward in relation to getting started with an export business to Japan?
Thank you. As I said in my reply, it remains to be the I's dotted and the T's crossed, but I think we're on the cusp of access to that market, and that's we have agreement in principle. It's interesting in the context of that market, the average kilo per capita consumption in Ireland of sheep meat is about 3 kilos, whereas in Japan it's in the region of 0.15 kilos. So a growing market opportunity, and the trade statistics show that it's a meat of preference that is growing significantly in recent years. So I think there is significant opportunities here. As I said, we have gained a foothold there in terms of pork exports, in terms of dairy exports, in terms of beef exports more recently, and the terms and conditions of that with the removal of the 30-month age restriction. I think we'll see more volume going in that direction. Sheep meat is a new venture in the Japanese market, but I do think there is potential there. It obviously, for geographical reasons, would be predominantly supplied by the Australian and New Zealand sheep sector, but I think there is opportunities for us, particularly in conjunction with other efforts that we're making in the broader meat protein areas in that market.
Second supplementary.
Yes, thanks, Minister. Just in relation to that, because it's vitally important, Minister, as you can appreciate, and for where I'm coming from in a constituency where there is quite a huge population of sheep in the constituency and the surrounding counties in the northwest, that it's vitally important that this market would be there, and many other markets, or whatever other markets could be similar to the previous question in relation to the beef. The more markets that we have opened there for the sheep meat also would be very beneficial to the farming community. Thank you.
Just by way of evidence of the significance of the market, between 2013 and 2018, the value of Japanese sheep meat import market has jumped by over 80%, from 93 million to 170 million. While during the same period, the quantity of sheep meat imported has grown by only 33%. So it is very much a premium product there, and I think there is opportunity for us. I do appreciate it. You know, it's an issue of having as many markets as possible, and the industry then availing of the market that delivers the highest price to the sector. I mean, Japan is a very sophisticated, developed market where food is a premium product, and I think, you know, it is a market that we could usefully exploit in the years ahead.